Welcome to The Big Idea. The U.S. mission to ASEAN started this show because we know that Southeast Asia is filled with leaders who have taken big ideas and turned them into a reality. And I have a very special guest that I get to talk to today. I'm your host, Jason Seymour, spokesperson for the mission. And today we are talking to a guest from Brunei. She goes by Bash Harry. And let's bring her in now. Welcome, Bash.
Hi, thank you so much for having me.
Absolute pleasure. You have done so many things. You've been to the United States. You're part of a YSEALI program, a US government program. You are a YouTuber yourself, and you're also an author. And that's the topic I want to get started with, because you just recently published a book, and let me make sure I say the name correctly. Oh, my darling, words in books I'll never write.
Yes, I have it. I have it right here.
All right.
I match.
A wonderful title. Now, what are you trying to tell us with that title?
Oh, my darling actually comes from the song Clementine. Oh, my darling, oh, my darling. So I absolutely love that song. And I thought it really captured what the book was about, lost love, especially lost young love, and how you feel going through these phases of love at such a young age. And I wanted to write it. And I thought the title, Words in Books I'll Never Write, as well, is quite meta, because the book itself is a little meta. It talks a lot about writing people. And I thought it would be very interesting to have, oh, my darling, words in books I'll never write.
So would you say that there's a romantic element to the book? So is it filled with advice for lovers, or?
It's not, no one's going to consider it a book full of advice at all. It's a poetry, it's a book full of short stories and poetry and vignettes for basically about short stories about a girl's adventures through young love. It's a lot more heartbreak than any advice anyone could give, but it's very interesting. I think it's Schrodinger's fiction. It's kind of fiction, it's kind of not, but I think that's why it's so enjoyable sometimes to write.
Well, every writer always pulls things from his or her own experiences. So there's always a little bit of autobiography in written material, but never completely, because the creative side comes forward. Now, have you been writing your whole life, or is this something that came to you recently?
I've been writing my whole life. I've been writing since, I think my first toy my mom told me was books and pens and paper. So this has been something that I've always wanted to do since I was a kid. And when you're 23 and you get to achieve it, it's just so wonderful.
It is. It is amazing.
Yeah.
Now, you're also the co-founder of a group called Brunei Writers. So please tell the audience a little bit about this group.
So the Brunei Writers is actually a relatively new NGO. We were created in July 2020. It was just around the time the pandemic was slowly winding down here in Brunei. And we created it, me, my co-founders, Mei Cho and Mimi Ahmad, who are amazing poets and writers. We got in contact because there was an event called SIPO Remo, which is the Southeast Asian Poetry Writing Month, where in August, people from around ASEAN will be writing poetry. And what we realized was that there was such a lack of connection between writers here in Brunei. And so we wanted basically a place for it. We wanted a place for young writers and older writers to get together and do workshops or collaborations or even do events. So our very first event was a poetry workshop, where we taught forms of writing. We got the founder of SIPO Remo to do a quick interview. And then, because I have a background in slam poetry and I was in the UK, and so do my friends, the co-founders, we organized a slam poetry event. And then from there, it just trickled on, and we've done a lot more projects, whether it's making a literary art magazine, a zine specifically for writers, or collaborating with Bruneian Reads to do a book club. We just wanted to give a lot more opportunities to writers to showcase their work or learn from other writers. And I think in the short amount of time that we've been an organization, it's been really great, and there's been so much support and love.
Now let's just take a moment. You use this phrase, poetry slam, and I'm familiar with the word, but some of our audience, this may be a new phrase for them. So can you please explain, what is a poetry slam?
A poetry slam is a group of poets. They could be actors, rappers, singers, but they just all have a common love for poetry and performing it. And some writers, some poets have the idea that poetry is meant to be spoken, the way that it flows, the way that it rhymes, all of these things. And so poetry slam is just a performance where everyone comes around and performs slam poetry. It's a bit humorous if you've watched 22 Jump Street and all those things, but you know, when I went to the UK and I did slam poetry, other unis, it was a very great place to just kind of meet individuals, like-minded individuals who love the act of performing and writing, and it's just cathartic. And having it and bringing it to Brunei is with such amazing people, and watching it grow has been amazing.
Now in Brunei, if someone wants to be part of this group, is it open to everyone, or are you looking for women poets or certain communities? Tell us a little more about that.
We actually open it for everybody. So if you have an interest in writing, you are more than welcome to join any and all of our events. And because we're an NGO and we want to focus on accessibility, we actually make our events free, or we do tiered pricing. So the way that we do for tiered pricing, like for example, we had a slam poetry night, we gave the amount as a pay what you want method. So $3, $5, $10, depending on how much you want to pay for it, and you want to pay for the event, or you want to pay for, you know, to help us out or give us a little bit of profit.
Now we have a wonderful question from our audience. Yeah. This comes from Mariko Ono from Yogyakarta. And she asks, what do you do when you face creative block, or writer's block, we sometimes call it in the States? Any tips to keep your creativity flows when writing?
For me, I experience a lot of writer's block, especially because this book has been in the works since 2017. Since 2017 until now, it took a long time for this book to actually finally get published, because I just had writer's block and I was too scared to finish it. And one thing that actually helped me to get over writer's block was just giving myself a deadline, giving myself, this is the day that I'm going to finish it. I don't know how, but I will. And not to be afraid that it's going to be bad, because truth be told, first drafts are always pretty bad. And that's why you do re-edits and redrafts. And the more that you look into the words, the more you get excited and you realize, oh, this might actually be something that I and many other people can enjoy. So for me, writer's block is kind of a stepping stone. I think a lot of it stems from fearing that your work is not as good as you think it should be. But that's just all in your head. It's really just making sure you write it within a deadline, and then you can fix it up later.
Great advice. Mm-hmm. Now, obviously, your family is very supportive of you. As a young person writing a book so early in life and getting it published, you clearly have people in your social circle that are helping to motivate you. But is that true in Brunei? Do you think that there are challenges in Brunei, particular challenges for either young people or for women to have a voice in your community?
I think especially for Asian women, it's very similar in the ASEAN region, how women are treated, how women have to act a certain way, whether it's from their peers or societal pressure. Don't get me wrong, I'm very lucky that I have an amazing family and friends who support me and they care about me. But I might be one of the exceptions, not to say that there aren't any, in the way that most people and most Asian families still expect their daughters to act or be a certain way, whether that is to be a bit more quiet, less reserved, more reserved. And I have been very lucky that my parents always made me strive to do the best I could do. They always told me to be opinionated and always question things, even if they didn't like it. Mm-hmm. And being a woman in Brunei, especially now in the 21st century, I think has changed a lot over the years. And I can't wait to see what happens in the near future.
In Brunei, if someone wants to watch American films or Southeast Asian films mm-hmm. and hear stories either on YouTube or through books, is there access? Are people able to acquire this material? Because a lot of those ideas are challenging the traditional gender roles, the traditional roles of men and women. So that is one way possibly to change the world.
Mm-hmm. It is.
What is your perspective on that?
I think media is very important to, change the world and kind of see what it's like over there, not just, through media as well, but also the internet, Tumblr, Twitter, even Instagram can actually change our mindset in a lot of things, both for good and bad, let's be honest. And then, but in Brunei here, there is a little bit where we have a lot of outside influences from not just the West, but also the Eastern perspectives from Malaysia, from Singapore. Because Brunei is so small, we can be influenced by all these things. And that's not necessarily a bad thing. It's just something that we have to be more conscious about.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Now in your bio, you were described as a legal officer.
Yeah.
Could you describe that a little more?
That's my day job. So during the day, Monday to Friday, 8 to 5, I am a legal officer at a telecommunications company. So I graduated mm-hmm. with a law degree from the University of Exeter. I specialize in intellectual property, art law, gender and sexuality, as well as discrimination law. So it's a very wide range of topics. And then I started working at this company and I absolutely love it. But then that's my day job. And during the weekends or the weeknights, I'm also a DJ. And I'm a media broadcaster, so I'm starting a new season of a TV show coming up. I'm hosting a TV show next month, yes, 1st of May.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's a lot. Do you sleep?
No, no.
I imagine not.
Mm-hmm.
So what are some of the interesting issues you think that are happening in terms of women's rights in Brunei? You said that a lot of things are changing. Do you mm-hmm. see things changing in the legal landscape and professional opportunities for women? What are some of the specific changes that you're seeing that are improving lives for women, both either in Southeast Asia or Brunei specifically?
Well, so when I did my degree in the UK, when we studied the gender and sexuality module, we really did look into the disparity between law students and actual lawyers. So for example, in the UK, it's about equal, having men and women, they're equal in law school. So 50% female, 50% male. However, when you go into the workforce, 75% ends up becoming male, whereas it's only 25% women. And so in that factor in the UK, I feel can be applicable in Brunei when we want to discuss how there is always implicit bias. There's always going to be implicit bias, whether we like it or not. But then I've noticed over the years, especially being a young person, is that the professional people who are much older, who have this experience, are willing to listen and kind of be conscious about their implicit bias and really take after people who have the drive, who have the experience, or who want the experience. And that's something that's very exciting. In our own in our own events, a lot of CEOs, a lot of women who are taking initiatives here in Brunei are women. So for example, I can think of Shini from Blue Rain Collective or Dr. Fee from You Can Lead Brunei. These are all just incredible women who are taking a lot of steps as heads of organizations to help younger women specifically, or even young adults in general, really, to push themselves forward into the professional field. Because in Brunei especially, I think it's a little hard to find employment, but I think that's just it everywhere, isn't it?
Mm-hmm. That's
Yeah.
true. It's true. Although things do change. Obviously, in the United States, there was a time when it was unusual to see women in certain professions. And now circumstances have changed so much that people can take it for granted. So having a woman doctor, at one time that was unusual. Now, the majority of students in medical school are women. And we now have our first US Vice President who's a woman.
Yeah,
And,
Kamala Harris.
you know, 30, 40 years from now, we'll have a second, we'll have a third, and it will be taken for granted. So you're right, it's about women and people from marginalized communities pushing forward, engaging, becoming part, contributing, part of the workforce. And then eventually it just becomes normal. But it is difficult in the first phases.
It's a slow build. So like maybe when it was the 50s or the 60s, you know, there were most women were teachers, most women were working at the home. And now, like, women can be anything. We have jobs just like everyone else, especially in this society that we have now. You know, I know most people have to survive on jobs and work.
I know you're focused on women in higher education as well. And have you seen an increase in Brunei in women pursuing a university education?
I think it's always been a thing. Maybe it's because I'm still a young person, but I've noticed a lot of girls are very interested to go into uni. A lot of girls want to travel abroad and study, and not even just that, even focusing on local institutions like UBD, UTB, even UNISA. I feel like there's a lot of girls there who want to explore education. And what I think is the most important is that they find education that they enjoy, because it's not just linear, it's not just all degrees about humanities and sciences and law. It can also be the liberal arts, it can be geology or geography or everything like that. I think finding what girls want to be comfortable in studying is also very important. And I feel like there is such a bias towards the sciences, but that's just everybody really. And I would like to see maybe in the near future, hopefully, a push towards a more broader spectrum of studies.
Well, one element that you said, I completely agree with that. I agree with what you said. And that was that you need to find something that you enjoy, something you're passionate about. Because whether you're a woman, whether you're a man, whether you're from a marginalized community or not, the professional world is competitive. And you're going to have to deal with a lot of stress and a lot of challenges. So you should at least enjoy what you're doing. You should feel passionate about what you're pursuing. That'll help you get past through some of those stresses. So yes, absolutely. There's a lot of push for STEM fields, but whatever you're interested in, if you want to be a writer and you're interested in the creative arts, go for it. Because if that's where your heart is, yeah, absolutely. Now you mentioned travel. So we talked a little bit before the show. Fortunately, you've had the opportunity to go to the United States.
Yeah.
And, just tell our audience what you were telling me. Where did you get to go in the United States?
So I went to America. I went to the US back in 2014. Yes, it was 2014. I was about 16 years old. And I was staying in Virginia for about 3 weeks, I think. And so just there on holiday with my dad, and we went to Washington, D.C. I looked at the monuments. I went to the museum over there, which was beautiful. And I was able to go to Baltimore, Maryland. I went to New York for a very, very long weekend, and I got to do all the touristy things. like I love being a tourist in different parts of the world. It's genuinely really, really fun just to be able to walk in somewhere new, because even the smell is different, the air is different, the people are different, and I just like to soak it in and just enjoy the presence.
Which just broadens your mind, both as a writer, but
Yeah.
just in life, because
Mm-hmm.
many different countries in this world, many different cultures. The more we
Mm-hmm.
learn about people who have different ways of thinking, the more tolerant we are, the more loving we are. So travel is
Mm-hmm.
important. If you can't travel, watch documentaries or travel shows just to
Yeah.
be exposed and learn about new ideas, new ways of being.
Mm-hmm.
Now,
Mm-hmm.
the US government was really hoping to send you back to the United States on a fellowship. We weren't able to because of the COVID pandemic, but please tell our audience a little bit about this YSEALI program.
So the YSEALI Academic Fellow, which I joined, I applied last year. Actually, I applied in 2019. So a while ago. I applied just after uni because that's what they recommend, 18 to 25-year-olds who are looking to do a 6-week program. So there's 3 different ones. There is entrepreneurship, environment, or civil. I consider myself an entrepreneur in different ways. So I obviously applied for entrepreneurship. And for entrepreneurship, you would assume you would be able to go to the US for about 6 weeks at a university, and you would study all about entrepreneurship. And afterwards, you are able to take what you have studied and learned with all those amazing ASEAN people that you've met and implement that in your country or however you want. And so I couldn't wait. So I did the Brunei Writers anyway.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Yeah.
We'll get you there. We'll get you there at some point.
I hope so.
All right. We have another question from our audience. This one is from Fitria. You have a lot of passions in legal, writing, arts, beauty, entrepreneurship. Is there one that you enjoy the most? Do you have a specific dream in mind? It's an interesting
The one
question.
I enjoy the most. Oh, no one's ever told me which passion I love the most. I think for me personally, it's always been writing. I've fallen in love with beauty and fashion when I was in my teens. I've fallen in love with travel when I was a young adult. I'm still a young adult, but these are things that I've always fallen in love with and grow to continue to love. But if you ask me what my biggest passion has been for the longest time, it has been writing, because for me, it's always been cathartic. It's something that I really do love, and I love sharing it with other people.
When you write, do you have a message in mind that you want to convey to the audience? Or do you just start writing and see what happens and where the story goes? How do you approach your writing?
So it's different when I write for myself and when I write for other people. So I'm also a screenwriter. I'm currently writing a TV show for a production company. And so for them, there's a whole structure, there's a whole point, there's a whole message, storylines, outlines that you have to do before actually writing it. Whereas something like my book, Oh My Darling, I would write it, I'd free flow it, I just write whatever I want. And after that, I would try to make sense out of it, whether that's through editing or structure or even just creating something a bit better because of it or through it. That's how I would perceive my own writing. But like I said, it's very, very different depending on the context.
I think that's a great recommendation for writers not to be too limited in how they approach their writing, to write different styles and see what clicks. And sometimes just write for yourself. Don't always think I have to write for a community or with a certain message. This one's just for me. I mean, try different things.
Yeah, there's always been, I think the best form of writing, the ones that I've seen from other people, they have a really clear and concise message. They have something that they want to say, and they do it so beautifully. And I've done it before, but for me personally, what I enjoy the most is always just writing however I want and just recreating something out of that instead.
Do you want to plug this TV show that you mentioned? Are you able to tell us anything about it yet?
I can't, because I just finished the final episode today, and we're hoping to start filming it tomorrow. So I'm one of the screenwriters for it, and hopefully it will be up on Progressive Media, which is a local media network here. So fingers crossed it actually works out.
Well, this video goes on YouTube permanently. Yeah. So when you have more information about that TV show, we can add it to the description.
Yeah, I'll share it on the comments.
So to know a little bit more about Brunei culture, what is one of your favorite Bruneian holidays?
My favorite Bruneian holiday? It's probably it's probably Hari Raya Aidilfitri, or it's Brunei's National Day. I think the Brunei National Day, it's always so fun and exciting, and you have such a strong sense of community in Brunei that you can just feel the excitement in the air. Whereas Hari Raya Aidilfitri, it's a little different. It's a Muslim holiday, and during Hari Raya, we get to celebrate it by dressing up really fancy. We go to visit our relatives, and it's so hopeful. And it's something I've always looked forward to since I was a kid.
I love that word, hopeful.
Yeah. Hopeful.
A lot of people in our audience may be learning about Brunei for the first time watching this interview. People from the United States, other Southeast Asians. What would you like this portion of the audience to know about Brunei and your experience growing up in Brunei?
I think the main thing that I would like people to take away about Brunei is that Brunei is actually very safe. We're very peaceful, and we're more than anything else kind to each other. Maybe it's just me, but when you have been living in a different country for a while, like the UK, and traveling to different parts of the world alone, there's really no place like home that feels safe, that people know your name and they care for you because you are someone's sister, or you're someone's cousin, or someone's niece. And you know, that kind of camaraderie, that kind of community is so rare, I find. And I always appreciate it when I come back to Brunei and I get to see my friends and family, and they're always so lovely. Yeah.
And if I had the opportunity to visit you in Brunei, what's something you would want me to see, a location or something special? If I'm a tourist there for a day, what would you recommend?
If you were a tourist for a day, you can basically see all the sites. So you could go to Kampung Air, you can go to Temburong because there's the new Temburong Bridge, so it's about 30 minutes. And then you can also go to KB. And then where else? There's a lot of good coffee shops, to be honest. And then Empire Hotel, which is, I think, a 6 or 7-star hotel. I can't remember. All these places you can go in just one day.
All right, I'm writing my list. Or if I get that opportunity, I'm going to write you and you'll let me know. I'd like to know some writers who inspire you. And if they're American, extra gold stars. But, they don't have to be. They could be Southeast Asians or from anywhere. What are some writers you enjoy reading?
So lately, I've actually been taking a step back, and this year I'm planning on reading more books by women of color. So one book that I've read recently is Kim Ji-young, born 1982, which is by a Korean writer. I'm reading a book right now called Sarong Party Girls that's written by a Singaporean. So I'm really focused on women of color, Asian authors specifically this year. But growing up, I'm not gonna lie, I was a pretty big fan of Twilight. Stephenie Meyer did affect me. Yeah. And what else? but now when I say my favorite authors, my favorite writers now, Phoebe Waller-Bridge, who does Fleabag, is so funny as a screenwriter. Rachel Bloom, who is the writer of Crazy Ex-Girlfriend, is so funny, and I love her work. She's American.
All right, I know. Gold stars for that one. Very good. And it is interesting how we go through life. You mentioned Twilight.
Mm-hmm.
We go through life and we go through phases in our personality and our maturation. And different writers will click with us at different points in our life. And our interests will change. We'll read books differently. And that's what's beautiful about art. We aren't stuck. We can keep looking for new genres and new types of art. You might go through phases where you enjoy writing, and then you might go through phases where you enjoy sculpture and other things.
Yeah. I wish I was good at sculpture. I can't do anything with my hands. I can type, that's about it.
If you could have a talent beyond writing, what would you like to have? And another artistic talent?
I am a surprisingly good knitter. So I personally knit. I knit sweaters, I knit hats, I knit gifts for babies, which I don't really post about because it's a very personal thing. And, you know, traditional crafts I would consider as an art form. But if I could, I'd probably try my hand in painting or illustration. My sister illustrated the book, Oh My Darling, and it's beautiful. I wish I had her skill. Mm-hmm.
Oh, I was wondering about that because I liked even just the title page. Love the colors and the font that you picked. And writers, when they think about creating a book, they have to think about all those elements, not just the page. I know you did a YouTube video about how to, I went into some of the details about publishing a book because there is the business side. And you're an entrepreneur, so you obviously looked into that deeply.
Yeah, and especially having a legal background, you know, reading up through contracts is something that's very important, especially for young creatives who want to get into this business and want to make a living out of it. You have to read your contracts. You have to understand what you're getting yourself into, you know, try to fight for yourself and your rights, your IP, your copyright. It is very important right now to understand your work and how to own your work.
That is a very good tip. So you had studied law. What would you recommend, or how would you recommend that young writers who have material that they want to publish, how do they get the legal knowledge or expertise or find a good mentor? What would you recommend for them as they search for answers?
So I did it in a very unique way. I knew the publishers beforehand because I've went through their workshops. I knew them personally, and I found them to be such great people that, you know, when I approached them with my book, they said yes. And, you know, it's been really, really great. I know a lot of my friends from the UK specifically who have published poetry books under indie publishing houses. They do it all through networking. They do it through submissions. They do it through basically just getting themselves out there. Especially as a young writer, especially for an introvert like me, sometimes it can get kind of scary to put yourself out there. You don't really know what people are going to talk about you. You know, you can't really, what's the word? I can't really think of it right now, but you can't really have everyone think so positively of you. And that's worrisome to some people. But in the end, if you want your work to be out there, you have to feel the fear. Do it anyway and really push your work that you feel is good to be put out there.
The truth of life is that there will always be naysayers. There will always be critics. And if you let all those people, all those critics stop you from pursuing your dreams, that would be a real shame. So as you said, just go for it. And the other tip I want to give the audience is that if you're between the ages of 18 to 35, we have the YSEALI network. And there are lots of potential mentors there, peers there, people who have published books, people who have ideas for you. So that's another way to find a peer network. So I highly recommend, if you're in that age group, that you sign up. Yeah.
100%.
But we do have one last question for you from the audience, because we're going to have to go soon.
Yeah.
But one more question was, have you ever thought to write a book or write your autobiography? It's a little early in your life, but you could. And use your life experiences to inspire all the women in the world. That's our question from our audience.
Would I write an autobiography? No, I'm way too young for that.
Yeah.
No one wants to hear a 23-year-old write an autobiography about teenagehood. No. No, not yet. Maybe when I'm 40 or 50, if I've lived enough, maybe. But as of now, I don't think so. I really enjoy writing fiction, and I think that's what I'll stick to for now.
Well, keep writing. You have a lot to say, and you're on your way with your first published book.
Thank you.
A lot of interesting ideas. And what I really appreciate is that you're not just focused on yourself. You want to inspire other writers, other people, which include women, which include people from marginalized communities, but for everyone to share your story with the world, because we all have a lot of things to say and we all can contribute to the dialogue. So thank you so much. Thank you for joining us for this interview. I had a blast. You gave me lots of things to think about. So thank you so much. For our audience, we're going to put all of Bash's contact information in the description below. And I hope you read up on her material, because there's lots of great stuff there. So thank you so much.
Thank you so much for having me.
Oh, my pleasure. And we'll say goodbye to the audience until the